I never thought I would find myself in this situation, standing in the doorway of my own home, heart pounding, breath hitching in my throat. The world outside seemed to fade away, leaving only the suffocating silence of the living room. It was supposed to be a quiet evening. I had come back early from work, excited to surprise her. But what I found instead shattered the illusion of my life. There she was, Emma, my wife of 5 years, entwined with another man on our couch. The sight hit me like a punch to the gut, a visceral shock that sent me reeling backward into the hallway. I clutched the doorframe for support, my mind racing as I tried to comprehend the scene before me. The laughter that had once filled our home now echoed hollowly in my ears, tainted with betrayal. My heart raced as I stood frozen, a whirlwind of emotions swirling within me. Anger surged first, hot and consuming, followed by an icy wave of disbelief. How could she? How could she betray the vows we had made, the promises whispered in the candlelight of our wedding? I had trusted her, loved her unconditionally, and in that moment, I felt the ground beneath me crumble. The man, somebody I didn't recognize, turned to face me, his expression a mix of surprise and guilt. Emma's eyes widened, and in that split second I saw the flicker of fear. It was a fleeting moment, but it ignited something deep inside me. I wanted to scream, to unleash the torrent of pain that had been building up for years. But instead I stood there, paralyzed, my mind racing with thoughts that spiraled out of control. Had I missed the signs? The late nights at work, the sudden changes in her behavior. I had been so absorbed in my life, my job, that I had failed to see the cracks forming in our relationship. It was as if a veil had been lifted, revealing a truth I had chosen to ignore. I could feel the bile rise in my throat as the realization dawned on me. I was not just betrayed, I was foolish. "Mark, I can explain," Emma started, her voice trembling, but I cut her off with a wave of my hand, my heart racing as I stepped back, feeling the weight of 1,000 regrets crashing down on me. I turned and fled, stumbling out of the house like a man escaping a burning building. The cool night air hit me like a slap, but it offered no relief. I felt raw and exposed, my heart pounding in my chest as I navigated the quiet street. The world continued as if nothing had changed, but everything had shifted for me. I was no longer the man who had laughed and loved with abandon. I was a stranger to myself. As I walked aimlessly, the tears I had been holding back finally spilled over, blurring my vision. I felt lost, adrift in an ocean of pain and confusion. Every step took me further away from the life I had built, a life that now felt like a cruel joke. The love I had cherished, the dreams we had shared, all lay in ruins, and I was left to sift through the debris of my shattered heart. I found myself standing on a bridge, staring into the dark waters below. I had never felt so alone, so utterly defeated. The weight of betrayal pressed down on me, and I wondered if I would ever recover from this. But deep down, a flicker of defiance ignited within me. I might be broken, but I was still here, still breathing. I would not let this define me. In the depths of my despair, I made a silent vow. I would not let her think I wouldn't recover. I would rise from the ashes of this heartbreak, stronger and more determined than ever, and she would see it. The days that followed were a blur of numbness and disbelief. I moved through life like a ghost, attending work, interacting with friends, but feeling detached from everything around me. It was as if I were watching my own life unfold from a distance, unable to grasp the reality of my situation. I spent nights tossing and turning, haunted by memories of Emma's laughter, her touch, and the love we had built together. Each recollection felt like a dagger twisting deeper into the wound of betrayal. I found myself replaying moments from our marriage, searching for signs that I might have missed. The way she used to look at me, the warmth of her smile, had it all been a facade? I remembered our first date, the spark that ignited between us as we shared stories over candlelight. I had thought we were soulmates, destined to navigate life together. Yet now I felt like a fool for believing in something so fragile. The signs had been subtle, almost imperceptible. I recalled the late-night phone calls she would take outside, the way she would smile at her phone, her cheeks flushed with an excitement that didn't belong to me. I had dismissed my instincts, rationalizing her behavior as work stress or a need for personal space. Now I was left wondering if I had been living in a fantasy, blind to the truth lurking just beneath the surface. Why didn't I see it? I often muttered to myself, frustration boiling over as I stared at my reflection in the mirror. The man looking back at me felt like a stranger, hollow-eyed and weary, the weight of betrayal etched into every line of my face. I felt inadequate, questioning my worth as a husband and as a man. Was I not enough for her? Did I not love her fiercely enough to keep her from wandering into the arms of another? Each thought spiraled into a cycle of self-doubt. I began to dissect our entire relationship, scrutinizing every moment spent together. The vacations, the anniversaries, the quiet nights in front of the television, all now felt tainted by the knowledge of her infidelity. I felt like I was drowning in a sea of what-ifs and could-have-beens, desperately searching for a lifeline to pull me from the depths of my despair. But amidst the turmoil, a flicker of clarity emerged. I realized that I had to confront my feelings head-on. I couldn't allow myself to remain a victim of her betrayal. I needed to reclaim my life, to rediscover who I was outside of the shadows cast by her unfaithfulness. I began to write in a journal, pouring my thoughts onto the pages like a cathartic release. It was messy and raw, but it gave me a sense of control over my emotions. I wrote about the anger I felt towards Emma, the confusion that wrapped around my heart like a vice, and the moments of vulnerability that left me feeling exposed. I also wrote about the good times, the laughter we once shared, and the dreams we had painted together. It was painful, but it forced me to acknowledge the full spectrum of our relationship. In those quiet moments of reflection, I also began to recognize the importance of self-love. I had spent so long prioritizing Emma's happiness that I had neglected my own. I had put her needs above mine, sacrificing my own identity for the sake of our marriage. Now, I had to reclaim that identity, to remind myself that I was worthy of love, respect, and happiness. I started to take small steps towards healing. I reached out to friends I hadn't seen in a while, reconnecting with people who reminded me of who I was before Emma. I went for long runs in the park, letting the rhythm of my feet against the pavement clear my mind. I even joined a local book club, immersing myself in stories that transported me away from my reality. With each passing day, I felt a little more like myself. I began to recognize that while Emma had made a choice that shattered our life together, I still had the power to choose my own path. I was no longer just her husband. I was Mark, an individual with dreams and aspirations that extended beyond the confines of our marriage. The more I reflected on my worth, the more I realized that I deserved better than betrayal. I was determined to rise from the ashes, to embrace the journey of self-discovery that lay ahead. I would not be defined by Emma's choices. I would carve out my own destiny. As I closed my journal one night, a sense of resolve washed over me. I would emerge from this experience stronger, more resilient, and ready to face whatever lay ahead. I could feel the flicker of hope igniting within me, a quiet promise that I would not just survive, I would thrive. The turning point came unexpectedly, like a sudden gust of wind that shifts the course of a ship. I had been going through the motions of my new life, focusing on rebuilding my identity, when I found myself at a local cafe one afternoon. It was a cozy place, filled with the scent of freshly brewed coffee and the soft murmur of conversation. I had chosen a corner table, hoping to find solace in a book I had been meaning to read. But as I sat there, the weight of my thoughts began to creep back in. I was lost in the pages when I heard a familiar voice, one that sent a jolt of recognition through me. I looked up to see Emma standing at the counter, her eyes scanning the room. My heart raced as I instinctively ducked my head, unsure of how I would react if our eyes met. It had been weeks since I had seen her, weeks since my world had been turned upside down. I had thought I was ready to face her, but the reality was different. The barista called her name, and she stepped forward to collect her drink. My breath caught in my throat as I watched her. She looked beautiful as always, but there was an air of vulnerability about her that I hadn't noticed before. For a moment, I felt a pang of longing, a fleeting reminder of the connection we once shared. But then the anger surged within me, bubbling to the surface like a boiling pot. How could she be here, living her life as if nothing had happened. In that instant, something shifted inside me. I realized I wasn't just angry at her for what she had done. I was angry at myself for allowing her betrayal to define my worth. I had spent so much time reflecting on our relationship, losing myself in the pain that I had forgotten to focus on my own healing. I had been a victim for too long, and it was time to reclaim my power. I took a deep breath, steeling myself as I stood up and walked toward her. My heart raced, not from fear but from a newfound sense of determination. I would confront her, not to beg for answers or to relive the past, but to assert my own strength. I had to take this leap to show her that I was no longer the man she had left behind. "Emma," I said, my voice steady as I approached her. She turned, surprise etched on her face, and for a brief moment we stood there, the air thick with unspoken words. "Mark," she replied, her tone a mix of disbelief and regret. "I didn't expect to see you here." "I can imagine," I said, my heart pounding in my chest. "I just wanted to say I'm done. I'm done being the man who waits for you to come back. I'm moving on." Her eyes widened, and I could see the flicker of emotions playing across her face: shock, sadness, perhaps even a hint of regret. "Mark, please, No," I interrupted, my voice firm. "I don't want to hear your excuses. I need to focus on myself now. I deserve better than what you gave me." As I spoke, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was no longer trapped in the cycle of pain and confusion. I was reclaiming my narrative, taking control of my story. I had spent too long reflecting on what went wrong and how I had failed. Now I was ready to embrace the future. Emma opened her mouth to respond, but I held up my hand, cutting her off. "I hope you find what you're looking for, but I won't be part of your life anymore. I need to heal, and I can't do that while being tethered to the past." With that, I turned and walked away, my heart racing as I stepped back into the bustling cafe. I could feel her eyes on me, but I refused to look back. I had confronted my past, and in doing so, I had found a new sense of clarity. I was no longer a victim. I was a survivor, ready to embrace whatever came next. As I stepped outside, the sunlight warmed my face, and for the first time in weeks I felt a sense of freedom wash over me. The weight of betrayal had been lifted, and I was ready to forge a new path. I could hear the laughter of people around me, the sound of life continuing, and I knew that I was ready to join it. I had taken a definitive step towards healing, and I felt a newfound strength coursing through me. I would rebuild my life, brick by brick, and I would do it on my terms. No longer would I allow Emma's choices to dictate my happiness. I was Mark, and I was reclaiming my life. With the weight of my confrontation with Emma still fresh in my mind, I felt invigorated and ready to embrace the next chapter of my life. I had taken a stand, and I was determined to follow through with action. It was time to focus on rebuilding myself, to rediscover the passions and interests that made me who I was before I had lost myself in the confines of my marriage. I started with small, manageable changes. I enrolled in a cooking class at a local community center, something I had always wanted to do but never had the time for while balancing work and my relationship. The first night, I felt a mix of excitement and nervousness as I walked through the doors. The aroma of spices and fresh ingredients filled the air, and I could hear laughter and chatter from the other participants. It was a world away from the heaviness of my recent past. As we gathered around the kitchen stations, I introduced myself to a few fellow classmates. They were all friendly, and I felt a sense of camaraderie building as we chopped vegetables and shared stories about our culinary mishaps. Cooking became a form of therapy for me, a way to channel my emotions into something creative. The act of preparing meals allowed me to focus on the present, to savor the moment rather than dwell on the past. Each week I pushed myself to try new recipes, experimenting with flavors and techniques. I remembered how Emma used to love my cooking, but this time it was different. I was cooking for myself, for my own pleasure and satisfaction. I found joy in plating dishes that were vibrant and colorful, a reflection of my new mindset. Outside of the kitchen, I also reconnected with old friends. I reached out to Jake, my college buddy, who had always been a source of support. We hadn't spoken much since Emma and I had gotten married, but I knew he would understand what I was going through. When we met up for drinks, it felt like no time had passed at all. We laughed, reminisced about our wild college days, and shared stories about our lives. Jake listened intently as I opened up about my recent experiences, and I felt the burden of isolation begin to lift. "You're better off without her, man," Jake said, his voice firm but encouraging. "You deserve someone who appreciates you for who you are, not someone who betrays you." His words resonated with me, and I found myself nodding in agreement. I needed to hear that affirmation. I was deserving of love and respect, and I was ready to embrace that truth. With each passing week, I ventured further into new territory. I joined a local hiking group, eager to immerse myself in nature and explore the beauty around me. The first hike was a challenge, but as I reached the summit, the view took my breath away. The horizon stretched endlessly before me, a reminder of the vast possibilities that lay ahead. I felt a sense of accomplishment, a reminder that I was capable of overcoming obstacles, both physical and emotional. Therapy became another vital part of my rebuilding process. I found a therapist who specialized in relationship issues, and during our sessions, I began to untangle the complex web of emotions that surrounded my marriage. I learned to express my feelings of anger, sadness, and betrayal in a safe environment. My therapist encouraged me to explore my self-worth, to recognize that my value didn't depend on someone else's actions. As I poured my heart out week after week, I began to understand the importance of self-compassion. I learned to forgive myself for the mistakes I had made, for the moments when I had turned a blind eye to the signs. I realized that I had been doing the best I could with the information I had at the time. It was liberating to let go of that guilt, to acknowledge that I was not to blame for Emma's choices. The more I engaged in these activities, the more I felt like I was rediscovering the person I had once been. I found myself laughing more, engaging with the world around me, and pursuing interests that brought me joy. I even started volunteering at a local animal shelter, where I found solace in caring for the animals and connecting with others who shared a passion for helping them. One evening, as I sat on my balcony after a long day, I reflected on how far I had come. I no longer felt like a victim of my circumstances. I felt empowered. I had turned my pain into purpose, channeling my experiences into personal growth and self-discovery. The sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and pink, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of hope. I knew there would still be challenges ahead, but I was ready to face them head-on. I had transformed my heartbreak into a foundation for a new life, one that was filled with possibility and excitement. I was no longer bound by the past. I was breaking free, ready to embrace the future with open arms. And as I looked toward the horizon, I couldn't help but smile. I was on the path to healing, and I was determined to keep moving forward. As the weeks turned into months, the transformation within me became undeniable. I had shed the layers of grief and betrayal, emerging not just as a survivor but as a man who was beginning to thrive. The world around me felt vibrant again, filled with possibilities I had long forgotten. I was no longer defined by my past. I was a blank canvas, ready to paint a new life. My cooking skills flourished, and I began hosting small dinner gatherings with my friends. Each meal was a celebration of my newfound independence. I experimented with flavors and cuisines, often incorporating recipes I had learned in class. I found joy in sharing my creations, laughing with friends as we savored the dishes together. It was a stark contrast to the lonely dinners I had once shared with Emma, where silence often filled the air. Now, the laughter and camaraderie were palpable, and I felt a sense of belonging that I had craved. As I spent more time with my friends, I also found myself opening up about my journey. I shared my experiences of heartbreak and healing, and to my surprise, many of them had their own stories of pain and resilience. It was comforting to know I wasn't alone in my struggles, and together, we forged deeper connections. I realized that vulnerability could be a strength, and in sharing my story, I created a safe space for others to do the same. One evening, while hosting a dinner party, I noticed a flicker of interest from Sarah, a friend who had come to support me during my transition. She had always been kind and attentive, and as we chatted over dessert, I felt a spark that I hadn't experienced in a long time. It was exhilarating yet daunting. The prospect of opening my heart again was both exciting and terrifying. I had worked hard to rebuild my life, and the idea of risking it for a new relationship was a leap I wasn't sure I was ready to take. But as I looked at Sarah, I saw a warmth and understanding in her eyes. She had been there for me during my darkest moments, and there was a kindness in her demeanor that made me feel safe. We shared laughter and stories, and for the first time since my separation from Emma, I felt a glimmer of hope that love might be possible again. After the dinner, Sarah and I began to spend more time together. We explored the city, went hiking, and shared our favorite books. With each passing moment, I felt my heart begin to open. I was learning to trust again, to allow someone else into my life. The more I got to know Sarah, the more I realized that she appreciated me for who I was, not who I had been. One autumn afternoon, we found ourselves at a local park, surrounded by the vibrant colors of fall. As we walked, I couldn't help but feel a sense of peace wash over me. I had come so far, and here I was, forging a new connection with someone who saw me as I truly was. I turned to Sarah, my heart racing as I took a leap of faith. "Can I tell you something?" I asked, my voice steady but filled with vulnerability. "Of course," she replied, her eyes encouraging. "I've been through a lot in the past year. I lost someone I thought I'd spend my life with, and it shattered me," I confessed. "But through that pain, I found a strength I didn't know I had. I'm still healing, but I want you to know that I'm ready to explore what this could be between us." Her smile widened, and she reached for my hand, intertwining our fingers. "I'm here for you, Mark. I understand the journey you're on, and I want to be part of it, however you need me to be." In that moment, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. I was no longer burdened by the fear of being hurt again. I had learned that love was not just about the past, it was about the present and the future. With Sarah by my side, I felt a sense of hope that I had thought was lost forever. As our relationship blossomed, I continued to invest in my personal growth. I attended workshops on emotional intelligence and self-discovery, eager to learn more about myself and how to build healthier relationships. I surrounded myself with positive influences, people who inspired me to be the best version of myself. I was no longer the man who had been betrayed. I was becoming the man I had always wanted to be: confident, compassionate, and resilient. The transformation was not just external, it was internal. I learned to embrace my flaws and celebrate my strengths. I no longer defined myself through the lens of my past, but rather through the choices I was making in the present. I was writing my own story, one filled with hope, love, and endless possibilities. As I stood on the balcony one evening, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I reflected on my journey. I had faced the darkness and emerged into the light, stronger than I had ever imagined possible. I was ready to embrace whatever came next, to live fully and authentically, knowing that I had the power to shape my own destiny. And somewhere deep inside, I knew that Emma would see this transformation too. She would realize that I had not only survived, I had thrived. It was a crisp winter evening when I first saw Emma again after our confrontation at the cafe. I had been doing some shopping downtown, enjoying the festive decorations that adorned the streets. The air was filled with the scent of roasted chestnuts and the sounds of laughter from families enjoying the holiday spirit. I felt a sense of peace and joy that I hadn't experienced in a long time. As I turned a corner, I spotted her across the street, standing outside a boutique. She looked different, more vulnerable, with her hair pulled back and a heavy coat wrapped tightly around her. For a moment, time stood still. My heart raced, memories flooding back in an instant, but I felt no anger, only a bittersweet sense of closure. I took a deep breath, reminding myself of how far I had come. Standing there, I could feel the strength I had gained through my journey. I had rebuilt my life from the ashes, and I was no longer the man who had been shattered by her infidelity. I was a new person, filled with hope and possibility. Emma caught sight of me and hesitated, her eyes widening in surprise. It was as if she had seen a ghost. For a moment, we just stood there, separated by the bustling street, the noise of the world. Fading into the background, I could see the conflict in her eyes, a mixture of regret and longing. "Mark," she finally called out, her voice tentative. "Emma," I replied, my tone steady. I approached her slowly, the distance between us shrinking with each step. I could see the tension in her shoulders, the way she fidgeted with her handbag. "I didn't expect to see you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can imagine," I replied, keeping my demeanor calm. "How have you been?" She hesitated, searching for the right words. "I've been trying to figure things out. I've been thinking a lot about what happened between us." I nodded, feeling a mix of emotions. I was proud of my progress, but I still felt a twinge of sadness for what could have been. "I've been doing the same. It's been a journey for me, a hard one, but I've come out stronger." Her gaze dropped to the ground, and I could see the regret etched on her face. "I never meant to hurt you, Mark. I was lost and made terrible choices. I've been working on myself too, trying to understand why I did what I did." "I appreciate that, Emma," I said, my voice firm yet gentle, "but I need you to understand that I've moved on. I've rebuilt my life without you, and I'm happy now. I deserve happiness, and so do you." Tears brimmed in her eyes as she looked back up at me. "I'm so sorry for everything. I never realized what I had until it was gone." I took a moment, allowing her words to sink in. "I know, but I also know that I can't go back to who we were. I've found a new path, and it's one that doesn't include you. I hope you find your own happiness too." Emma nodded, her expression a mix of sorrow and understanding. "I hope you know how truly sorry I am for everything. I wish I could take it back." I offered her a small, genuine smile. "We can't change the past, but we can learn from it. I've chosen to learn and grow, and I hope you do too." As I turned to walk away, I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. I had confronted my past and found closure, not through anger but through understanding. I was ready to embrace my new life, one filled with love, friendship, and the promise of tomorrow. In the months that followed, my relationship with Sarah blossomed. We explored new places together, shared dreams, and supported each other in our respective journeys. I learned to trust again, to love again, and it felt beautiful. I had opened my heart to the possibility of a future filled with joy and companionship. Looking back, I realized that Emma's betrayal had been a catalyst for my transformation. It had forced me to confront my own worth, to rediscover my passions, and to embrace life with renewed vigor. The pain had shaped me, but it no longer defined me. As I stood at my balcony, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors, I felt a profound sense of gratitude. I had weathered the storm and emerged stronger than ever. I was Mark, a man who had risen from the ashes, ready to embrace whatever life had in store for me. And as I reflected on my journey, I couldn't help but smile. Emma may have thought I would never recover. But here I was, thriving, alive, and ready for the next chapter. The past was behind me, and the future was bright.